Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC betting preview. I'm your host, Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down a 12-fight card for UFC 315 going down in Montreal, Quebec, Canada on Saturday night. Two title fights on the card. The main event, welterweight title bout between Belal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena. Della about plus 160 on the money line. Belal around minus 180. Has come down, though. Jack was previously closer to plus 200. This fight is minus 160 to go to decision, plus 125 to end inside the distance. Billy is thinking about a bunch about this fight this week. The fight that jumped to me off the page as the most similar comparison. This is going to be a little awkward. It's also going to be a little funny because it's another fighter from Perth. This reminded me a little bit of the Steve Erceg Alexander Pantoja fight. Not exactly in terms of the stylistic nature of Belal versus Pantoja, but the relative boxing of Jack Della, the damage he's expected to put on against the grappling control of Belal, the way it just may play out stylistically. Belal, like Pantoja, extremely durable. Jack Della, like Erceg going into that fight, not really tested over 5 rounds. So I think Jack clearly the better boxer at distance, Belal the better kicker. Belal obviously has more grappling upside. And I think from Belal's perspective relative to the other guys Jack has fought, Belal just a little bit more conservative in terms of advancing position once he actually has control of guys, not aggressively pursuing submissions, not necessarily leveraging up for ground and pound. He does prioritize control over submission, position over submission once he actually has control of opponents. We've seen Jack get taken down a bunch, but he's been very good at scrambling out from bottom against people. I believe he got taken down 4 times on 20 attempts by Basel Hafez. We bet Hafez as a plus 400 underdog or so in that fight. I think it went to split decision. Hindsight, Jack probably ended up deserving the decision, but Hafez did certainly outfight his moneyline number in that matchup. And, it showed that Jack can have problems with guys who proactively grapple. So, all of that said, I do think the biggest factor here and the thing that I landed on in terms of siding with the underdog is the age differential. Della Maddalena, 8 years younger than Belal. We have the stat about fighters older than 35 and how they perform generally in title bouts. And I do think taking the youth advantage from a long-term perspective at plus money, probably the side to go with. I think Belal has a ton of success in this fight. I think it is close and competitive. I think it likely goes to a competitive decision that one of them wins 3-2. You're on the other side of this matchup. You're going to take Belal. I'm not confidently betting Jack here. I made the line about plus 150. The best available price is plus 160. We're both curious to see where this line goes relative to where it was now. Because as I said, the line came in. Jack was closer to plus 200. Belal was closer to minus 225. It's pushed in closer together. You seem to think it's going to continue to push in and Jack's going to become a shorter priced underdog and you might be able to get Belal at a better number. So where do you think it closes? Where are you interested in betting Belal? And then how do you view the fight? I'm probably waiting. I want plus 160 or better to bet Jack. I'm going to see if it goes up from here. So what are you doing at the line where it is right now?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I think it's going to get better for Belal. I'd say I'm optimistic it does. He's one of the more unpopular champions we've had in the UFC for a long time. And that is partially because of what you mentioned, his fighting style, which is extremely smart. It's the optimal path to win a fight, but it's also not the most exciting because he doesn't create any opportunities for his opponents to do anything to him, much less, or for him to really get too close to finishing too many fights. Other than that time he just starts Sean Brady that we all seem to forget about, his boxing has gotten better. Brady is a tough guy, even striking, and Belal made him look real bad. And of course, the other half of that is Belal's politics and all that, I think are not the most popular amongst the UFC betting fan base, which exerts some pressure. People want to bet against him, all of that stuff. I think right now, if the fight were starting in 5 minutes, I would probably just suck it up and take the minus 180 on Belal. I think the wrestling edge is too big for Della Maddalena to overcome. Not only did Hafez take him down 3 times, and I thought that should have been a draw. I thought it should have been a 10-8. First round for Hafez, the next 2 for Jack. But, I'm okay with where it ended. Gilbert Burns took him down 7 times and was up 2 rounds to nothing until Maddalena knocked him out in the 3rd round. He was definitely losing that fight. And that was his only non-split decision win of his last 3 fights. So, he has fought lesser competition much closer. He got outstruck by Kevin Holland by the numbers. He gave up more damage than he took Della Maddalena the more impactful shots. I'm fine with that decision too, but these have been close. And Bilal is a step ahead of these guys with just a bad stylistic matchup. So, long story short, if I had to take the minus 180 on Bilal, I think I do. If I see minus 170 or better, I'm probably jumping on that at any point. Otherwise, I'm kind of waiting until closer to fight time. I think we still see action on Jack Della Maddalena. I'd have to think a little bit about how these time zones work and when the Australian audience is going to be betting their guy, because I can't figure that out while talking live. But, you talk about it with Asian fighters, it's a similar effect where when those guys get up on fight day, the timing is a little bit weird. They push overseas markets, that pushes domestic markets. I think that'll probably be an impact too, because a lot of those guys are going to want to bet on Maddalena. Also, you mentioned the over 35 curse, and you failed to mention that it's been broken. Alexander Volkanovski has rendered that obsolete. No plus 35-year-olds will ever lose again because of Alexander Volkanovski. So ding dong, the witch is dead. It's fine. We can bet old guys now.
It's 11:20. They're 12-hour difference. 11:20 p.m. right now as we're recording in Australia relative to here. So by the time weigh-ins roll around tomorrow morning, Friday morning, I think that's where maybe the final line movement comes in post weigh-ins once these guys both hit the scale. I neglected to mention this is Jack's first 5-round test, which is super key. I think the youth, gives me alleviates some concerns that I have regarding that. He's also looked fine near the end of his 3-round fights. The Hafez fight, he was rallying late. The Burns fight, he looked super fresh in between rounds 2 and 3, despite getting taken down repeatedly. So I actually think his cardio is going to hold up fine over 5 rounds, but certainly worth noting that Bilal is the one with the 5-round experience, knows how to manage his gas tank, is on a bunch of supplements, looks very physically strong and athletic for a 35-year-old. But I do want to mention, Jack's power has just kind of been sneaky the entire time he's run up the welterweight ladder. The shot he hit Randy Brown with, even Brown was surprised at how much power that had on it. It really stunned him. So I do think his boxing is very sharp, and I think he has sneaky power. I also love the way he mixes to the body and the head as well. His combinations are very crisp. Overall, I think he's going to do the more eye-catching things for judges. And I do think if they're standing at range for the majority of this fight, he's likelier to win it. That's not to say that Bilal can't strike. Bilal kicks really well, but I think Jack's punches compared to Bilal's kicks are going to weight a little bit more heavily. It's really going to come down to how often Bilal gets the takedowns and how long he's able to hold those positions and whether the judges prefer that control time to whatever damage Jack is putting on the feet. Again, I think Bilal is going to be extremely competitive in the striking. Just prefer Jack ever so slightly on the head strikes compared to the leg kicks.
You
but
have
this should
in
be a
our
very
sheet,
good fight. One have gone back and forth a bunch on analyzing. You had more thoughts here, Billy?
No, I just say you have in our sheet. I don't know if you mentioned it, but JDM by knockout at plus 350. I think if you're gonna bet him, you almost have to do that. Bilal is gonna find a way to win rounds. He's like the better strategist. He'll win a round just holding you against the fence and punching you to the body a bunch of times. And nobody likes to give him those rounds, but if the other guy doesn't do anything, you kind of have to. So I actually really like that angle that you put in there. And honestly, I think I might be more optimistic about Maddalena's striking advantage than you are. I just don't think we get to see too much of it. So go ahead and
I projected value on the ends inside the distance. I really don't give Bilal a ton of finishing upside. I think I made it like plus 105 to end inside the distance. You can get plus 130 out there. I'd rather just take Jack either inside the distance or by KO. I made that closer to plus 250. You can get plus 350. He does have that club and sub win on his record, so it gives me a little bit of pause just taking the KO prop when that inside the distance prop is sitting around plus 275. So may take the inside the distance as compared to the KO, considering he already has one club and sub in the UFC. I didn't look at the decision only markets. Is that something you looked at for Bilal at all, or not particularly interested?
I didn't look because I'm assuming he's like minus 700 or something stupid. Like, just don't. I mean, his money line is decision only, like it already is. Like that's how he's going to win if he wins. So I don't know. Maybe Maddalena really gets tired in the 4th or 5th or whatever. But if you're betting Bilal, it's straight up. I think you're just not getting better prices on anything that seems reasonable. For me, it's Bilal decision or Maddalena knockout or finish. I don't think even if he clubs him, he's going to sub him. Bilal is a very, very good grappler. But when the prices are that close, sure, like you're not giving up that much to cover your bases. So I'm good with either of those. but I wouldn't worry about the decision only.
Yeah, Bilal's minus 525 in the decision only market.
Yeah,
Jack is
like
minus 175 in the finish only market. Both of those seem okay to me. Jack plus 5.5 is minus 165. I mean, a 48-47, sure, but laying juice on it, not particularly interested, nor am I really interested in minus 5.5, plus 120 on Bilal. I don't like those 5.5s in these 5-round fights. It's very goofy. You're kind of relying on the 48-47 times two and then the 49-46 to either cover it or not cover it, which is not all that fun. We'll get to another point spread in a little bit that I'm also sketchy about at the 3.5, but I think maybe the best way to bet that fight. Let's move on to our fight of the night. Women's flyweight title bout between Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot. Fiorot currently the favorite at about minus 125. Valentina plus money, the GOAT of this division, seems like would be the obvious side at the plus money price. This fight is minus 250 to go to a decision, plus 190 to end inside the distance. Both of these women are older. Valentina 37, Fiorot 35. So one of these fighters is going to break or add to the tally of the fighters older than 35 in title fights. I don't really know if we can count this one, considering they're both older than 35. Now, Manon, much less experience, but also much less damage on her body. And I think athletically, it's been very obvious that Valentina has been declining in her recent fights, was able to take down Alexa Grasso repeatedly in her last matchup. But overall, the striking volume severely reduced relative to earlier in her career. And I think the longer this stays at range, Fiorot should eventually pull away on volume. However, Valentina retains the grappling upside. We'll see if she can put Fiorot on bottom and keep her there. Fiorot had that 5-round fight against Erin Blanchfield where we bet Blanchfield. A lot of people bet Blanchfield. She 50-45 there and looked like the future champion in the process. Landed 170 significant strikes across that fight. Looked extremely physically strong. Looked a division bigger than Erin Blanchfield in that matchup. I do think she's going to look a little bit bigger than Valentina in the cage. The height and reach is relatively similar, but in terms of the overall size of their frames, I think Fiorot is going to have a physicality advantage here earlier on. That said, Valentina may be able to put her on the bottom and keep her there. Has all of that wrestling upside, but in an extended striking fight, I do prefer Fiorot's volume across 15 or 25 minutes in this case. You're on the opposite side of me here, Billy. I made Fiorot about minus 135, current line about minus 125. You're interested in betting Shevchenko at plus money, but potentially waiting for her later round props. I kind of agree. I think Shevchenko a very strong live bet because Fiorot is a fast starter, but Valentina more 5-round experience, especially if she doesn't mix in the grappling right away. You know, if they just strike it out from the opening round, Fiorot, I think, is likelier to win it, but then you may get a big, juicy plus money number on Valentina live after round one. So I would imagine you're targeting Val live, but you certainly like her late props as well. Go ahead and give me your breakdown and tell me your price targets.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is I'm kicking myself for not taking the better price on Valentina earlier in the week. I think we saw as high as plus 135 or plus 140. It's an interesting fight because a lot of what you said about Manon applies to Valentina as well in every other matchup. Like, she's bigger and stronger and more athletic than almost every other woman on the planet. And they've both relied on that pretty heavily. Like, Valentina gets a lot of takedowns, but I don't think she's a great technical grappler. Like, I'm not saying she's bad, but like, she's not doing it because she's hitting these, you know, very technical, complex chain wrestling. She's doing it because she's bigger and stronger than you and kind of just picks you up and puts you down. And that's, you know, Fiorot landed a takedown on Erin Blanchfield, and it wasn't pretty. She kind of just got off to the side and hoisted her up and carried her around a little bit because she was so much bigger and stronger. And in a fight like this, I don't know who's going to have that. You know, like, they're both, as you mentioned, they're both over 35. Stole my thunder. I was about to say my best bet was that, you know, the curse continues to be broken in this fight. But if Valentina is declining athletically, there's no reason to say Manon isn't. They're like 18 months apart in age. There's not a big difference there. And it's one of those, like, sometimes you see it with really tall fighters where they get matched up with the one dude taller than them in the division. And you're like, how is that going to work for them? This is kind of what I'm seeing with this, where it's like, I don't know how either of them are going to respond to not having a massive athleticism edge that they have grown to rely on so much. So long story short, because of that, it was kind of just if I can get plus money on one side in a fight I view as very close, I want it. But the big plus money pre-fight on Valentina is gone. I like her 4-5 decision prop, which that's even coming down. It's plus 155 now. The last time she finished someone, she finished Jessica Andrade, and it's been a while. Oh, Caitlin Chukagian, like lower level competition. Andrade shouldn't have been fighting at 125. Chukagian, not that great. Manon, I don't believe, has ever been finished. Also hasn't finished anyone else. Basically, I think it's going to go late. So if I'm betting the Valentina side, I want Valentina and late. Could also go Valentina by decision, but it's not that much better of a price, and I like getting those late stoppages for the person with way more championship round experience. And again, as you pointed out, live is fine too. I just have to do the full fight breakdown of this one, so I don't want to come in with a don't bet this, come out live, because that's kind of wimping out. But yeah, that might actually be the best angle is Fioro pre-fight or nobody pre-fight, and then Valentina live.
Yep, that's the angle I'm taking. If you're minus 125 pre-fight, best available number. That's roughly where it opened. It's actually minus 122 now at FanDuel. Roughly where it opened. It went up, as you said, as high as Valentina plus 130 during the week, and then came back down back towards the opening number. But yeah, Fioro, pre-fight money line, and then live on Shevchenko, how I'm looking to play this one. Before we get to our favorite underdogs on the card, it's perfect time to talk about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Do you ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was a way to get in the game? With Underdog, there's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the house. The game is in your hands to play. Choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like touchdowns, strikeouts, points scored, significant strikes landed, and more. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all baseball picks or mix and match across sports. You can play with as little as $1. And if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into 1,000 with your sports picks and your sports knowledge. Billy, what do you see in terms of value on Underdog this week?
Yeah, I'm going right back to the fight we just talked about, Manon Fiorot versus Valentina Shevchenko. What I love about Underdog is you can take both sides of a fight and make a pick for each person in that matchup. So I like Manon Fiorot lower than 87.5 significant strikes. If she lands 88 significant strikes on Valentina Shevchenko, she will be the first person to ever do so. Valentina Shevchenko has never received that many strikes. And then to that, I'm adding Valentina Shevchenko higher than 51.55 fantasy points. If Fiorot is getting limited in terms of how many strikes she's landing, it's probably because Valentina is getting some takedowns. And as we know, in all forms of DFS, the takedowns are king in terms of fantasy scoring. Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code Action Network to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join me on those picks or any others and claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly on first deposit with promo code Action Network. Must be 18 plus, 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 in Colorado for some games, and 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Now, from Underdog Fantasy to our favorite underdogs, Sean, start us off. We have one consensus pick here.
Yeah, Chuck Buffalo, Charles Radke against proper Mike Malott. I think we're both mostly targeting Radke live. I think that's where you may get the best number because he's likely to get out grappled. I would say in the opening round, he could absolutely land a knockout blow. I want to have a pre-fight ticket on Radke, but I do think you probably get the best number live after round one. Malott, typically a good starter, relatively durable, has a little bit of power on his own, but the cardio is a significant concern. His collapse against Neil Magny, one of the worst, I think, in the history of the UFC. Could not imagine having a Malott ticket in that fight. Could not imagine having a fight to go to decision ticket in that matchup either. I mean, just absolutely dominated for the first 14 minutes and then melted in the final 60 seconds and just took ground and pound until the ref called it off. He was hanging on for dear life, hoping to hear the final bell. Would not come. Has not been extended much. Tends to finish opponents in round one. But when he does get extended, it tends to look very ugly. So Buffalo, Chucky Buffalo, Charles Radke, moneyline pre-fight, KO pre-fight at plus 360. But then also his live betting angle after round one. and his late props. Radke to win in round 2 at 10-1, Radke to win in round 3 at 13-1. Would take those down to about 8-1 and 10-1, respectively. Big size advantage for Malott, 6'1 versus 5'9, is the better grappler, but I think Radke is going to rally here if he doesn't get submitted on bottom within 5 minutes. Billy, do you kind of see that playing out similarly? Do you like the Radke live angle and the late props, and then any other ways you're considering betting him beyond the money line?
So my initial read was exactly what you described. Then I looked into it a little bit more. Chuck Buffalo has been a BJJ black belt for like a long time. And if you just search Charles Radke grappling, he's got a competitor page on Smooth Comp like a mile long. The dude is out here grinding black belt tournaments at like random rec centers across the country against every black belt he can find. And super heavyweight, just doing all kinds of cool stuff and dominating. And he's never been taken down in the UFC. He's fought guys who probably aren't going to do that, like Blood Diamond and Carlos Prates.
Yeah.
So like that's so it's hard to say that for sure. I don't know that Malott has the grappling edge that I initially assumed he did. Is where I'm going with that. I think at best he might have a grappling edge but not a wrestling edge, which means we get kind of a sloppy yet fun striking matchup between two guys who hit hard, don't have great defense, and are kind of just going to go for it. And one of those dudes is plus 140-ish and the other's minus 160. So I know where I'm going to put my money on that one. I think, we put big gloves on these guys. I'd probably maybe favor Charles Radke. I don't have a strong opinion on who's the better striker. But at worst, it's a coin flip, and we're flipping a coin at plus 140. So I actually like the pre-fight. I don't know that grappling plays out the way you described, even though that's how I thought it was going to until I dug a little deeper. So I'm mostly with you. Live stuff, always fun if you can get it. But this one, I'd rather have the plus money pre-fight, because I'd be kicking myself if Chuck Buffalo comes out and dominates round 1 and now he's minus 300 or whatever.
Love that analysis. Yeah, I think that just increases the likelihood of an early knockout, early finish for Radke. If Malott is not able to grapple him, I certainly prefer Radke striking, prefer his power. I think I prefer his durability as well, and definitely prefer the cardio. So a lot of things pointing to Radke if he's able to defend the grappling in that matchup. Another fight we want to talk about in this underdog section, Jung Lee against Daniel Santos. This line has kind of flipped. I believe Santos opened as the favorite. He's now sitting as high as plus 120. This fight is plus 123 to go to a decision as well. That is sort of where I lean. Bantamweight division, historically about a 52% division rate. In recent years, with all of these quality bantamweights on the roster, this division has gone a decision at nearly a 70% clip. I believe it's 68% in the past couple of years. But overall, historically, you can average it out closer to 52%. Getting plus money at plus 123 seems like an interesting bet to make, but this should be a high-paced war between these two. Daniel Santos, Willie Cat Santos, is an extremely aggressive striker, and we've seen Jung Lee struggle with pressure in the past, getting knocked out by Hyder Emil. So I'd imagine you like Santos. Just curious at what price point you like the money line, and then whether I should not bother sweating the GTD prop because somebody's likely to get finished here. Tell me your thoughts on how this one plays out.
Yeah, it's a tough one. When I was making my notes for this last night, Daniel Santos was like plus 105. Now he's plus 120. I said, I want to bet on Santos if the line keeps moving. But there's a weird paradox here where if the line moves too much, I'm probably going to overthink it and go, I don't know, what am I missing here? Because, we've had some insider betting issues in UFC in the past. Stuff can happen. I think Daniel Santos is the better fighter. Like, I've been very high on him throughout his career. But he signed in 2022, has had 3 fights, and hasn't fought in almost 2 years. And he's also going up a weight class for this matchup, which, we haven't seen him in 2 years. Did he put on 10 pounds of muscle? Maybe. Like, probably hasn't done a lot of drug tests in the last 2 years. And he lives in Brazil where they don't really care what you do. So that's an option. But he might come in and just be the smaller guy and be outclassed. Or also, he hasn't fought for 2 years because he's been injured and not training. Like, we just don't know, which is why I've wanted to wait to get the better plus money. With that said, like, we have plenty of data that when a guy opens as a favorite and closes as an underdog, Vegas had it right more than the markets. I don't know what the market is doing here with Jung Lee. The plus 120, I'm going to wait and hold out. If we see like a plus 130, I think you have to pull the trigger. But just get as greedy as possible here. You don't have to make this bet, right? If it doesn't get to where you want it, don't take it. I'm hoping it gets a little bit better. If it gets too much better, I'm going to talk myself out of it. So like plus 130, plus 140, kind of the sweet spot. If I see beyond that, I'm going to be nervous. Might still make it, but yeah, it's a weird situation. The market movements have got me a little bit freaked out here.
Yeah, the move up in weight class, I think partially lending my desire to bet that goes to decision prop. At least 6-inch reach advantage, 3 inches taller. So is the bigger fighter. I don't think Willie Cat's aggression is going to threaten Lee as much as a similarly sized fighter like a Hyder Emil would. So I do think this is an aggressive war. I think it's a high-paced, fun fight of the night candidate. But I think this is one of those sweaty fights that ends up going all 15 minutes, ultimately getting plus money to do so. A bet I'm interested in making, a bet I'm not in love with making, but we'll see if I get there on it.
Everything in this fight is scary. Like there's what feels correct is scary on both sides of it. I will say, broadly speaking, absent any other information, you tell me a 30-year-old flyweight is moving up to bantamweight, or is he going from bantam to feather? Bantam to feather, sorry.
Bantam to feather, yep.
Either way, 30-year-old dude going up a weight class always feels like a good thing. Like maybe not middleweight to light heavyweight or whatever, but these smaller guys, like, I feel like you're going to perform better without as severe of a weight cut. But when I haven't seen you do it for 2 years, I'm scared. So like, just like you're scared on the total, I'm scared here. Probably going to end up making it, but yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look through his fight history on Tapology to see whether he was pulling out of fights, whether opponents were pulling out of fights. That's one of those things I like to dig deeper into. Do you happen to know offhand, or is it just he's not been booked?
Mostly Santos, but so it started before he got his debut. There was a couple other guys that pulled out against him. More recently, it's been all him pulling out. So yeah, but then he didn't have a lot on the books for a while either. So
yeah, that would, I mean, if he didn't have something booked for a while, that would lead me to believe he was nursing an injury from training or something, and just told them like, I'm not ready for a little while and was coming back. This is all speculation, but it's the bigger point is like, when a guy's been out for a while, try to figure out why they've been out. You know, were they dealing with an injury? Were they constantly pulling out? Were their opponents constantly pulling out? Like there's a difference from 1-2 year layoff to the next. It actually surprises me that he's been off for that long, because he seems like a guy who's been relatively active. He's a fun fighter, fan favorite. I don't really know how much the move up in weight helps him though. Like he always had a very aggressive style. Seemed like he had good cardio. Didn't seem to be a guy who was fading in the third round. Do you remember like any sort of cardio issues for him? Because I don't.
No, but just again, like as someone who was, cutting weight into my mid to late 20s, like it just gets harder. And we don't know what he looks like in the gym when he's fresh, right? So like, while it might not look like he has any issues, that might be him at 80% or 90% or whatever. But yeah, as I say, to your point, like the opposite end of that is somebody like Beneil Dariush, who got their full paycheck, including win bonus, to not fight, and then you don't see for a while. Where someone like Santos, who's just had 3 fights in the UFC, you'd have to imagine financially he's trying to get in there as much as possible. You would think. I don't know.
Let's talk about 4 fights from a prop perspective before we wrap up with our bets. Let's stay on the main card with Mark. My apologies. Let's move to the prelims with one of the better, more interesting dynamics on the card between Jasmine Jasudavicius and Jessica Andrade. This is probably the most dangerous fighter that Jasudavicius has faced. This fight is minus 110 to go to a decision in a division where the average fight goes to decision about 68% of the time. So I'm probably taking a price discrepancy play here on Jasudavicius by decision at plus 250. I think that is certainly an interesting, or she's plus 135, I should say. I make her minus money to win by decision in a fight where she's favored. She's minus 300. If you multiply her win rate, that 75% win rate, by the divisional average, you should be at minus money. I think I'd put this fight at around 60% to go to a decision instead of 70%, but still not getting it closer to that 50% mark. So mostly size advantage, grappling upside for Jasudavicius here. Andrade is the more dangerous of the two. Andrade does tend to get finished when she gets stuck on bottom, but Jasudavicius does not strike me as a relatively consistent finisher. The ground and pound is fine, but she's not somebody who I think is going to consistently finish opponents on the mat. She does tend to prioritize position and look to keep opponents down. And against a particularly aggressive finisher like Andrade, I think she's going to look to stay safe once she actually gets the fight to the ground. So Jasmine -3.5, -135 on the point spread. We've seen Andrade when she loses decisions lately, she's typically losing all 3 rounds. Or the fight to go to decision at -110, plus Jasmine to win by decision at +135. All 3 of those bets interest me in this matchup, as well as a live bet after round 1. If she loses round 1, hasn't grappled much yet, I think she does get the takedowns in the second and third round and survive. So Billy, Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. Any thoughts on this matchup? Any way you're betting it?
I really like your -3.5 there. I was kind of hoping we get a better price, but I've talked about this with Kevin Holland, where there's 2 Kevin Hollands. There's middleweight Kevin Holland, who's okay, and there's welterweight Kevin Holland, who's really good. There is 2 Jessica Andrade, because at 115 she's a physical specimen who has power that no one can hang with other than like the best of the best. And at 125 she's just a little bit too small and just kind of gets bullied around. So I like that. I'm actually a little bit tempted by Jasmine by finish. Here's why. She has 2 submission wins in her last 4 fights. They are both from a front headlock series. She has a Darce and Anaconda, which are basically the same thing. Don't come at me, jiu-jitsu people. You know what I'm saying. But that's how Andrade tries to get up. She's going to try to turtle and stand back up to fight, which gives opportunities for those. So maybe even a submission prop for Jasudavicius. The -3.5 kind of covers all of it. Either she dominates the grappling or gets those, but I'm very tempted for the sub prop. If BetMGM combined those into one submission, as I would argue that we could, because it's just which arm goes in first, it's the same thing. I would try to do the specific market there. I don't believe they do. I haven't looked, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the -3.5 probably the best way to play that. And then if she loses round 1, you can probably hop on with a better live bet after round 1. That might be the 2 best ways to play this fight. The GTD just seems so far off from the divisional average. I'm uber tempted to play it, given the price discrepancy. But, to your point, Andrade loves to stick her head into chokes and quit when it's not going well for her. Another women's fight on the card I want to touch on, Natalia Silva, -3.5 at even money against Alexa Grasso. Grasso coming off of her title fight loss to Valentina Shevchenko, where she looked relatively disinterested in that fight, was not able to get up off the ground. Now, something I want to shout out about Natalia Silva and a data point I've noticed in terms of handicapping fights, most fighters trend towards 100 on their combined strike accuracy and striking defense. Alexa Grasso is around 99. Most fighters are around 100 combined. Strike accuracy plus striking defense. The elite of the elite fighters, the championship caliber fighters, tend to be above 110. Dustin Poirier, 102. Max Holloway, 106. Justin Gaethje, 111. Ilia Topuria, 111. Alexander Volkanovski, 114. Valentina Shevchenko, 116. Islam Makhachev, 119. Natalia Silva is at 111. Alexa Grasso is at 99. Now, Silva has fought a lower level of competition, but this is a data point I've noticed kind of maintains itself no matter the level of competition that you're fighting. If you can maintain that significant strike accuracy and defense combined above 110, you are probably an elite level championship caliber fighter. Silva has done that to this point. Grasso a little bit less efficient, but Silva has about 7% on her in striking defense and about 5% in terms of striking accuracy. So I do really trust the numbers for Natalia Silva. She's defended 22 of the 24 takedown attempts against her in the UFC. I do not think Alexa Grasso is a particularly good wrestler. She does have good submissions, but she's not good at getting the fight to the ground. Silva's won 13 of her 15 rounds in the UFC. She lost round 1 to Teresa Bleda, where she did get put on bottom and put in a submission attempt at the end of that round. But aside from that, I think her grappling has generally looked pretty solid, and I think she's continued to prove the longer she's been in the UFC. So getting or having the lay juice here on a up-and-comer against the former title holder and multiple-time title challenger, I think seems a little sketchy just because of the relative status levels that they've achieved in their careers. Silva's also been to some close decisions, but I think Grasso needs grappling success here in order to overcome Silva's drastic speed advantage, and I think her speed and her kicks, her movement around the cage are really going to frustrate Alexa Grasso for the entirety of this fight. I would probably lay the money line on Silva. I make her -300, would probably consider laying it at -220. I think her -3.5 at even money may be the better bet. Grasso could absolutely win a round off of her, but I do think she needs to grapple in order to have success doing so. Billy, feel free to tell me I'm wrong in terms of my analysis on this matchup, but I do think Silva is a championship level fighter. What's your view of her? What's your view of her in potential title matchup against either Valentina or Fiora? How do you view those three fighters relative to one another? And then how do you see this one playing out? Are you interested in betting it at all?
I'm fully with you. To honestly like strengthen your point about the striking stats a little bit, a lot of those fighters you mentioned that had the best numbers, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski, a lot of that came because they were on top of an opponent. And it's really easy to have higher, good defense and good offense, and when you're in mount or whatever, like that's super easy. Silva almost entirely on the feet. She had 2 takedowns against Jasmine Jasudavicius in her UFC debut, which is super impressive for a striker to come out and do that. Other than that, though, she's built her stats on the feet, which make them even more impressive. I think she's at a physical disadvantage to either of the women fighting for the title now.
Fair.
But she's also a good bit younger. So if she waits that one out, definitely future champion potential. Like her, Blanchfield, Macy Barber, we kind of have a good little crop coming up in that division. Love your bet. Might even play Silva finish just because she is so dynamic on the feet, although we haven't seen it in a few fights. But if Grasso is as uninterested or has that championship come down kind of situation that we sometimes see, it wouldn't shock me if she just kind of a little lethargic out there, eats a spinning back kick, goes home. So yeah, fully agree. I'm mostly on the same way, or if anything, stronger feelings than you have.
Yeah, good points about the physicality. But as we mentioned, Fioro and Shevchenko, 35 and 37 respectively. By the time they actually fight, those two may have potentially aged out speed-wise, athletically. Silva is just super fast. Really love her movement, her athleticism. Really fun fighter. Should be a good matchup. Three more fights actually we want to talk about in this prop section from a prop perspective. Let's go back to the main card. Benoit Saint Denis against Kyle. Is it Prepolek? Guy who's previously been in the UFC. BSD is like a minus 1,000 favorite here. I project the fight like minus 600 to end inside the distance, but Prepolek never been knocked out, and I believe has not been submitted in quite a long time either. Do you think it's more so him surviving for 7.5 minutes, or do you think BSD coming off of consecutive losses is just a little bit more conservative than he has been in recent fights?
All the above. I'll start by saying Prepolek is kind of an unknown to the audience because he's been gone for a few years. Came up around the same time as me in Windsor, which is basically 15 minutes from my house. We fought on plenty of the same cards. I've hesitated whether I was going to say this on air or not. I think he armbarred me in an amateur fight when we were like 19. We're the same age. But there was another Canadian dude named Kyle who was tearing us all up, and I'm honestly not sure which one it was and couldn't find it in the Facebook memories. So
too many white guys named Kyle from Canada.
Yeah, there's a dude from Windsor named Kyle who armbarred me like very quickly when I tried to go to 155. And I think it was him. I'm not 100% on that though. But a few points. I do think BSD comes out more conservative because he's hit that wall so hard. He also said that he was fighting without a coach, like he was just running his own camps. And if you're running your own camps and you think you're the man, yeah, you're going to come out and try to blitz everyone. And if you have a coach, maybe they say, hey, we're here. We got 3 rounds. Let's not empty the tank now. Prepolek, as you pointed out, never been knocked out. The last time he was finished was a dozen years ago against Kevin Lee. He's fought some really tough and that was a pre-UFC fight. That wasn't in the UFC. They were both like 3-0 as pro fighters in a Michigan regional fight. So very tough guy, very good technical striker. I think his strength and power and physicality just hasn't held up to the elite athletes of the UFC, which is also going to be the case against BSD, obviously. But the other thing I think people are missing, we're thinking of this as a short notice signing. Prepolek was booked to fight Friday night at a different show in Montreal. That's why he got the call here, because he was already fighting. He was already ready to cut weight. He was literally fighting 24 hours before this one in the same city. So he had a full camp. He had as much preparation for this one as BSD. What I have in there right now is the over 1.5 at plus 130. If we get fight to start round 2 at plus money, those markets aren't up yet. That's probably where I would pivot. The gist of it is I think we see the classic UFC last minute fight where the guy coming in shocks us all with his first round success and then ultimately kind of fades and we remember why he was a plus 800 underdog or whatever. I think we're going to see that here. And those are hard to bet on because you can't do the point spread because if they get finished late or give up a 10-8. So that is my general thesis here, is that we are impressed by Prepelec's moral victory that does not turn into an actual victory.
Yeah, I would imagine the BSD round 1 prop will be heavily favored, but even the round 2 prop will probably only be plus 250, plus 300. It probably will not be enticing enough to play. I think that over 1.5, the fight to start round 2, pretty good looks on a matchup where we have a lot of reasons to underrate the challenger's durability. As you said, the fact that he was on a full camp, but also I think you could see a style change from Benoit Saint Denis coming off of those recent losses. 2 more fights from a prop perspective. Navajo Sterling against Ivan Urslan, a light heavyweight bout. I projected Sterling minus 480 in this fight. He's currently around minus 300. I think he's a relatively safe parlay piece, but Urslan could potentially grapple him. What are your thoughts on the matchup? Do you see Urslan trying to grapple, tiring out, getting finished late? You like Sterling late props? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, so anytime we get these recent Contender Series signings, my first area of study is to go back and read my Contender Series breakdown pick of them. And when Sterling was on the Contender Series, I said, he's a city kickboxing prospect, really good technical striking, very patient, counter striking. The city kickboxing blueprint, right? Like, we know these guys at this point. We know what they do. And I picked him to win in round 2 or round 3 in that fight, and he won in round 2 against an aggressive first-round finisher. The UFC debut proper went to a decision against a fighter in Tuco Tucos who didn't really take it to him the same way. I think Urslan looks almost exactly like the guy that he fought in style-wise on the Contender Series. Urslan has a ton of first-round wins, a ton of losses when it gets out of the first round. Hyper-aggressive, tries to just melt you right away. It's just the perfect setup for Sterling to do the same thing. He's got a big reach advantage. We're in the big cage. He can pick him apart with the jab, feint and counter strike in round 1, turn it up in rounds 2 or round 3. So various ways to play this. You can, do a SGP to make this one bet, whatever. But I've got Sterling round 2 plus 480, round 3 at plus 700. Both those are on FanDuel. I think he finds the finish here, but he takes his time a little bit against the hyper-aggressive Urslan.
Yeah, I'll probably be joining you on that. Seems like a better approach than laying juice on the money line. I may parlay Sterling up with somebody. Silva, Natalia Silva.
Money line got juiced real hard, too. He was I think minus 280 or something on Monday, and now it's way past that.
Yeah, I make it close to minus 500. Like I said, he's one of my bigger projected edges on the card. I'm just not super excited about betting a guy at minus 350 straight in his second UFC fight, but parlay piece in Natalia Silva, I think you can get that over even money or very close to it, maybe minus 110, minus 120. Marc-Andre Barrio against Bruno Silva, the taller of the Bruno Silvas. We'll have another Bruno Silva fighting in the flyweight division in a few weeks. Barrio been knocked out a bunch of times in his recent fights. He used to be one of the more durable point fighters in the UFC, high volume, action fights, but was able to stick in there and be super durable. Silva seems like an extremely diminished version of his former self, came to the UFC with a big reputation. I think he had a bunch of wins in M1 Global and fought a lot of tough Russians. Since the Alex Pereira fight, he just seems like completely shot physically, getting knocked down and submitted by Gerald Mearshart, like physically diminished. His chin doesn't look great either, but I do view Silva as the more durable of the two. I view him as the one likelier to finish of the two. You're betting Silva by knockout. I lean to Barrio by decision. There's a way that you can combine those opinions into one bet.
Yeah, DraftKings has those two, either or. It's minus 175, though, which I don't love for, basically either or on specific method of victory. But if it's going to happen, it seems like that's kind of how it goes. Theoretically, Bruno Silva's last 3 fights have all been decision losses, even though one of them didn't go the full 15 minutes. And that's because he got TKO'd via eye poke by Chris Weidman, which became a technical decision. Probably should have won that by DQ because he got poked in the eye, just a bunch of times. One time he got 3 stooged in both eyes at once. We got to do something here. And then his other finish losses are both submissions to Brendan Allen and Gerald Mearshart. That's going to happen, right? Those guys are going to submit some people. Took Alex Pereira to a decision, though, which was pretty impressive. In theory, he's the much better fighter. He's more athletic than Marc-Andre Barrio, far better technical striker, way more just juice. But he came out in an interview in one of his fights and was like, I didn't really want to be there. I'm just kind of phoning it in. So that's why I can't bet his money line. If it seemed like he cared as much as I would care about my bet as he does about his own fight, I would probably bet his money line. I can't be confident in saying that's the case. And it's easy to say, like, if he doesn't get a quick knockout, maybe that's when he quits, right? He comes out, throws some punches. If you have some success, it's easy to care if you're beating a guy up. When it goes against you, maybe that's when you kind of just phone it in. So I am with you. If Barrio wins, I think it's a decision. Silva wins, I think it's a knockout. Pick either or, play them both at minus 175. I'm good with any of that. I wish we could trust either of these guys. Like Silva, it's mental. Barrio, it's physical, but they both are scary at this point in their careers.
Let's get to our best bets for UFC 314. I'm going to go with Ion Cutelaba at minus 110 against Modestas Bukauskas. Cutelaba, always a fast starter, always a guy you want to have a pre-fight ticket on if you have one on him at all. Can look to live bet his opponent live after round one. But I think Cutelaba showed in that Even Ursulan fight that he has at least 10 minutes of cardio to win a decision if he needs it. He did fade hard in round three. I think Bukauskas can come back, rally, and beat him in round three. But Bukauskas has really struggled against more physical opponents. When he's able to get that outside, low tempo, moderate tempo kickboxing match, he looks very comfortable. When he gets guys who pressure him or are more physical than him, Vitor Petrino, Khalil Roundtree, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, he really struggles with that physicality. He likes to have space. He's a tall, long, lanky guy. He likes to have space to land kicks. He does not like being crowded or fighting in the clinch or grappling as proactively defensively. He's a decent offensive grappler, but defensively, he really does seem to struggle. I think Cutelaba in general, just generally kind of an underrated guy because the ceiling and the floor are both so high and low respectively. He's not the most fun guy to bet on because when he loses, it's going to look like an utter collapse. And that could absolutely happen here after the first 8 to 10 minutes or so. But I think you can grab a live number on Bukauskas if he doesn't get put out of there early. And I think also combining Cutelaba at minus 110 with the ends inside the distance prop at minus 220 or the under 2.5 rounds at minus 164 could be a good approach to take as well. I think he either finishes Bukauskas early or fades and Bukauskas finishes him in round three. I also like Cutelaba inside the distance at plus 130 as well. Billy, any thoughts on that fight? And then after that, you've got a best bet in the opening fight on the card, Brad Katona against Almacan.
Yeah, I didn't really think of this angle until you said it, but I believe Bukauskas has like some kind of karate or traditional martial art background with his kicks and stuff like that. And if you come out aggressively at those guys, there's just nothing they can do. Like we've seen it time and time again. So I had not really thought too hard about that fight from a betting standpoint because it's a DFS gold mine. Like someone's going to score a lot of points in that one for DFS. But you have mostly convinced me that at the very least I'll be much heavier on Iwan for DFS, and I might even bet him as well. So yeah, that was a good point. I hadn't thought that far, but I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, Bukauskas has the knee injury too versus Roundtree. Like since the injury, like I just don't think he wants to grapple as much. I think he really prefers being outside and kicking and being a volume cardio guy. And as you said, when you crowd those karate style guy, those kicker guys, like their game kind of falls apart completely. He's going to get pushed up against the fence here. Probably going to get taken down. We'll see if Ion can finish him on the ground. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead and give out your bet for Katona against Almacan.
I'm giving out the best bet. Like I am super happy about this one. Beksat Almacan. I'm pretty sure Beksat stands for Baby Shavkat. From the same region of the world. They look similar. They fight similar. So I know I'm doing the thing that we occasionally complain about and have referenced a couple times here. But when a fighter comes in on short notice, they win that moral victory. We get really high on him for the next fight. It doesn't always work. But Beksat came out and dropped Umar Nurmagomedov on short notice in his debut. And now he's only, let me check, like minus 145 against Brad Katona. He's going from Umar Nurmagomedov to Brad Katona, and we're not making him a massive favorite. I don't understand. I think he's actually very good. His highlight reel in the pre-UFC, can be misleading. But he's a guy, he aggressively grapples, he strikes. He fights so much like Shavkat, and they're from that same Central Asia region. He is more experienced than his record would indicate because they have some Kazakh national sport that is basically MMA, but you only get 10 or 15 seconds on the ground. Mm-hmm. And if you watch clips of him doing that, he is just wrecking these people. And to emerge from those regions that produce so many good fighters, you have to be good, right? You can't be okay and even make it out of those places to get to the regional scene. I am so excited about Beksat. Bet him to finish Brad Katona if you want. Nobody finishes Brad Katona. The man loves decisions, but there's a first time for everything. -3.5 at +140, also awesome. I bet him at a worse price in luck. Like the CLV has gone totally against me, and I don't even care. I'd still do it. I'm going to bet him again. So yeah, love this one. Partially, the thing I'm not saying here is I think Brad Katona is very not good. He just ekes out like very boring decisions as his ceiling, and he's somehow tiny. He has like a 5'4" reach, which doesn't help in a big cage against a guy who throws cool spinning hook kicks and dropped Umar Nurmagomedov. So yeah, very excited about this one, which probably isn't always a great sign. Sean, do you have any thoughts on that fight?
Bexat was about +800 in that fight against Umar. Did drop him early. Mostly got out wrestled. The rest
Umar,
of the
Sean. Nobody drops Umar, and he did.
It's a fair point, and survived to a decision, which I think is the most important point. You know, despite having all those modified MMA rule bouts where nobody's allowed to grapple for more than 30 to 60 seconds in those fights. They were wearing wrestling shoes in some of those fights. He was able to survive to a decision, showed the submission defenses there against the high-level grappler. Did spend most of the fight on bottom, but that said, his tape looked pretty interesting. He looks like a good athlete. The tape is funny, too, because they're fighting on, like, a lot of carpets inside of cages. Like, it's some of the most bizarre tape you'll see watching regional MMA. The modified rules, the carpets in the cages. But, yeah, Almakhan seems like a good athlete. Just very tough to gauge his level, you know, fighting guys regionally in Kazakhstan and then coming over one fight against a championship caliber UFC opponent. And then, as you said, taking a step down in competition to a Brad Katona level fighter is just jumping all over the map in terms of level of competition. Probably a fight I'm passing on. I didn't really show much value here. I do think it's likelier to go to a decision than not, but I would imagine that line is pretty juiced up.
Yeah, it's like -500 or something.
Almakhan point spread, perhaps. Could be an interesting.
Yeah, I said that at +140, but if there's one thing Brad Katona is good at, it's sneaking out a little round. He'll sneak one of those rounds from you there. So that's why I'm.
And the fight's taking place in Canada. Got to keep that in mind. Katona, the Canadian boy, may get any deference from the judges in a close round. Especially, I feel like a lot of the time too. Fighter wins round 1. Round 2's close, and the judges are like, it's close, let's make it 1-1. Like I feel like that happens way too much, where it's like, yeah, let's put the fight on the table in round 3, just because one round was clearer, one round's close. Like let's just make it interesting. So I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of that in Canada. So yeah, good point. Just take Almakhan on the money line rather than laying the point spread if you're considering it. But that'll do it for our UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content from both Billy and myself, both on actionnetwork.com and in the Action Network app. And if you'd like to instantly tell some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, make sure to look for the quick slip links both in the podcast and the video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to all of our expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.